My name is Frank Gressick, Command Sergeant Major Gressick. I'm the commander of the American Legion, Riverside American Legion 488. I'd like to thank everybody for attending this remembrance ceremony. It's a special day that people often forget, and we really appreciate folks coming out that live in Riverside, former soldiers, airmen, Marines, present soldiers, airmen, Marines, and future soldiers, airmen, and Marine. This would not be possible if it wasn't for Mr. Tom Sisolek, who year after year sets this up, works tirelessly to have such a wonderful remembrance. Mr. Tom Sisolek.
Thank you all for being here today. And I would like to also thank all the veterans, whether you're residents of Riverside or other villages. We have quite a few people attending our program now from North Chicago, Lake Forest, Aurora, Brookfield, North Riverside. A lot of separate villages have joined our program over the past few years, which is fantastic. I'd like to see that and continue recruiting other folks to come and join us in the future. It is our goal to develop this program in Riverside to become an entire family event, to focus on teaching the children the true meaning of Memorial Day, not just another vacation day from school. Also to honor the Riverside 54, our young soldiers from Riverside, most of whom were recent high school graduates of Riverside Brookfield High School, or even students who dropped out of high school to join the service, World War I, World War II, Korea and Vietnam, in defending our freedom. Also to recognize all of Riverside's veterans, all veterans from all communities, and present-day active soldiers. I found a quote from former President Theodore Roosevelt, which he presented in 1916, exactly 100 years ago, and it was also at a Memorial Day program in St. Louis, Missouri. In his presentation on May 1916, he stated, quote, "The salvation of our people lies in having a nationalized and unified America, ready for the tremendous tasks of both war and peace." I'll read that once more. "The salvation of our people lies in having a nationalized and unified America, ready for the tremendous tasks of both war and peace." His words are just as true today as they were 100 years ago. Only 10 months following his presentation, the United States Congress, on April 6, 1917, declared what would be World War I on April 6, 1917. I would like to welcome Father Thomas May for our invocation.
Once again, good morning and welcome to St. Mary Parish Center as we, the community of Riverside, remember and we give thanks for all those who have served in the armed forces. And we remember especially those who have died defending our freedom. So let us pray. Gracious God, on this Memorial Day, we remember and give thanks for those who have given their lives in the service of our country. When the need was the greatest, they stepped forward and did their duty to defend the freedom that we enjoy and to win the same for others. O God, you yourself have taught us that no love is greater than that which gives itself for another. These honored dead have given the most precious gift they had, life itself, for loved ones and neighbors, for comrades and country, and for all of us. Help us to honor their memory by caring for the family members they have left behind, by ensuring that their wounded comrades are properly cared for, by being watchful caretakers for the freedom for which they gave their lives, and by demanding that no other young men and women follow them to a soldier's grave unless the reason is worthy and the cause is just. Holy One, help us to remember that freedom is not free. There are times when its cost is indeed dear. Never let us forget those who paid so terrible a price to ensure that freedom would be our legacy. Though their names may fade with the passing of generations, may we never forget what they have done. Help us to be worthy of their sacrifice. O God, help us to be worthy. Amen.
Thank you, Father. I think we should also extend a round of applause for Father Tom and his staff and his church members for letting us use this beautiful facility today. I would now like to invite Will Flaherty, Eagle Scout from Troop 24, to come forward for the American Flag Color Guard. He will be providing the commands.
Color Guard, attention. Everyone please rise and remove your hats. Color Guard, forward march. Scout salute. Prepare to post the colors. Color Guard, post the colors. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Color Guard, dismissed. Girls, please.
You may be seated. At this time, we would like to recognize all the veterans that are here today in attendance, whether you're a resident of Riverside, Berwyn, Brookfield, Lake Forest, anywhere you might reside. When I announce the decade of your military service or the conflict, if you would please stand. The first group will be any veterans that are here today who served during the 1940s and World War II. Please stand. Also, any wives, widows, or family members who had fathers, uncles in World War II, please stand. Any veterans here today who served during the 1950s, during the Korean War, if you would please stand. Any wives, widows, or family members whose fathers, relatives served in Korea, please stand. The next decades are the 1960s and 1970s. Any veterans who also served during the Vietnam War, please stand. Any wives, widows, or family members of Vietnam veterans, please stand. And finally, any veterans who served during the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, during the Cold War, Iraq I, Afghanistan, Iraq II, Syria, or the Gulf War veterans, please stand. And also wives, widows, or family members of those 4 decades, please stand. And the Girl Scouts also have thank you cards, so we'll take a minute. If the veterans would please raise their hand right now, we'll have these girls filtrate through and give you a handcrafted thank you card. While they're distributing thank you cards, I would like to announce that sadly during the past approximate 6 months, hold your hands up high, men. Sadly during the past 6 months, Riverside has lost 3 of our World War II veterans. Joe Zick, United States Army, served in Germany, World War II. Ed Mexto, United States Army Air Corps, served in. I would now like to invite Katie Couladin 8th grader from Hauser Junior High School for a few more days till she'll be a freshman. And if you would please stand for the national anthem as you're able. The mic's okay?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
You may be seated. Katie's only 14 years old. I would now like to begin our recognition of Riverside's honored veteran this year. If you look on the back page of your program, you will read the names of previous Riverside honored veterans. 2009, Frank Sisolak was the oldest living World War II veteran in the state of Illinois at that time. World War II, Africa. 2010, Jimmy Michaels, corporal in the Marines at Iwo Jima. His photograph was in one of the very first pictures that was the first one, but actually the one that was not publicized. He was in that picture. 2011, John Liu, Captain, United States Army Air Corps, pilot, instructor, World War II. 2012, Dr. Marion Magalotti, Captain, medical doctor, World War II. 2013, Mr. Donald Farnham, right here in the front row. Don, you want to stand up? United States Marine Corps, also at Iwo Jima. 2014, Gordon C. Hay, United States Army Air Corps, B-17 bomber pilot, World War II. 2015, we honored the wives of World War II soldiers. 2016, Lou Heine, Petty Officer, 3rd Class, U.S. Navy and Marines. Lou Heine here today. Lou, want to stand up? He's in the back row. Combat medic right on the battlefield.
first duty for Dr. Benjamin was actually serve on the United States troop training. One of our soldiers returned from combat in Europe. They came back home to the United States by ship. They landed in New York. And then they were trained in every direction in the United States, working their way back towards the United States. So Dr. Benjamin was for this troop training from New York. He came to Chicago first. And last, as I was thinking the last day, and now we can like to Riverside on the way to San Francisco. This is kind of a critical teaching for our program. And actually, the train station was at literally thousands upon thousands of soldiers traveled through the station on their way to combat or on their way back home. On the troop train from New York to Chicago, Riverside, California, Dr. Benjamin was also a combat. On the train to help take care of the sick nurse who had served overseas. The nurse was in Poland. Dr. Benjamin later taught me this really was very cute. We got to San Francisco. We had video. Dr. Benjamin asked me to scenario, which they did. San Francisco. All the two officers of the States Army were a medical team together. And the responsibility from San Francisco were once again to help soldiers who returned from combat to find reasons soldiers to serve in the Pacific theaters. Returning home to San Francisco, looking at various hospitals, various accommodations. And Dr. Benjamin and his wife, Nurse Colleen, would travel to their silver-driven team for 2 years. They would help soldiers, which back then they would call shell shock, which now we call post-traumatic stress disorder. But they happened once they had an appointment to help the soldiers get their teeth, which was given by another sergeant, most likely, who was hit by a San Francisco city bus. Family, this is anybody who has a broken pelvis. Dr. Benjamin suffered a severe toe fracture. He was in a coma for over 2 weeks. And then he was made it through and he practically fit. And the doctors had to inform him that he was totally not in full years for the rest of his life. And then Dr. Benjamin and his wife, special army hospital in Oklahoma, where Dr. Benjamin had a critical oxygen, and they lost all of his balance, and he had to talk, also a nice delivery. He told me when I visited him last week that he studied and worked like a fool to get everything down so that he could progress into his medical career as soon as possible. And they were discharged from the hospital in Oklahoma, they went back to Dr. Benjamin's birthplace in Pennsylvania. And Dr. Benjamin also told me he had writing prayers to many, many hospitals. And sadly, 50 letters of rejection to hospitals that there's no way Dr. Benjamin will be able to help. He is unable to speak or listen to the formal message. But they didn't give up. We make a lot of concern Dr. Benjamin to continue pursuing his lifelong dream. He was in 4th grade. He was inspired by a in grade school of picking a doctor, taking care of a very sick young girl with her mother and the father were being scared. That's what inspired him to become a doctor. But that he was a college to make his life. Then, only Benjamin wrote another letter. The program happened in Chicago. This time, she didn't tell the hospital administrators that Dr. Benjamin was young. So actually, she asked him to come to Chicago for an interview. And he did. The interview went quite well until obviously he was there. She covered that Dr. Benjamin was totally deaf. Once again, they said there was no way to help any of the patients here in Chicago. Dr. Megwine and Paul Lee. Put forth a request by that interview, and the hospital administrator agreed to give Dr. Megwine a 3-month probation time. He would be rated once he had studied and read and his life with his partner, listening, speaking, studying, and Dr. Megwine 3 months probation. I don't know how to like to turn every one of these making for famous 46-year careers. He was one of the very first doctors in America, along with several other doctors that took up who created, developed, and implemented nuclear medicine. He also became, at the age of 35, the department chairman of the nuclear medicine department. Actually, when he was part of Dr. Megwine, he actually had 2 doctors. Dr. Megwine and his wife. They moved to Riverside in 1950. If you would like to check some resources, almost 2 years, May 4th, 1950, Dr. Megwine was appointed. On the front page of the business was research and development of nuclear medicine, which not only started here in Chicago, but spread throughout the United States, throughout the entire world. Dr. Megwine is very determined, very intelligent, very hard worker. So bring him up. Anytime you like this difficult, think of Dr. Megwine. I'd like for those that have a moment to read a special practice of the year.
Very, yes, action of attending.
Find a better village to live in, Riverside. Thank you very much for being here today.
Kind enough to show me his hall at his house. This year, we are very honored to recognize Donald R. Farnham, PFC, United States Marine Corps, was at Iwo Jima, and I would like to invite Don to come up. I also ask Donald Jr. to come up and introduce the rest of his family that are here today.
Thanks very much to everybody for coming out today on this very important day of remembrance. I'm here today surrounded by friends and family to honor and to introduce a great father, a great American, the greatest man I've ever known, a Marine Corps veteran, Iwo Jima survivor, and just a wonderful, wonderful humanitarian person. My brother Dennis, my sister Molly, my sister Mary, numerous grandchildren, and a great-grandchild. I'd like to introduce my dad, Donald Farnham.
We have several other special guests to honor Don Farnham today. I would like the Riverside Village residents to come forward. Ben Sells. Michael Gorman. Jack Wyaduck. Paul Stack. Joe Di Natale. Also at this time, I'd like to have the Riverside Fire Department Honor Color Guard come forward. Thank you. You may be seated. Also today we're honored to have a special presentation by Mr. Bob Upuse, editor of the Landmark newspaper. Bob, if you'd come forward.
It's been customary in Riverside on Memorial Day in recent years to recognize a local veteran. Today, it's my honor to introduce Don Farnham, a veteran of World War II, a U.S. Marine who fought in the Pacific on Guam and Iwo Jima. I'm sure that many of you know Don, who is a longtime resident of Riverside. Many of you also likely know that Don's role as a local public servant for the better part of the last 17 years, ever since the late Dr. Bob Novak sought his help in forming a local access cable TV channel to document Riverside government in action. Don Farnham has been a public servant as a member of the Riverside Cable Commission. And at the age of 87, he also sees no reason to stop. He's just been reappointed to another 3-year term on the commission. Little did Don know, as a 17-year-old high school senior in Little Phoenix, New York, in 1943, that the next 3 years of his life would have a direct influence on his role as a Riverside public servant. After graduating from high school, Don enlisted in the U.S. Marines. And while he says he did so in order to have some control on where he would inevitably end up as a young man during wartime, Don was also following the example of his 4 older brothers, all of whom were already serving in the U.S. Army. Like Don, 3 of his brothers saw combat. 2 were wounded, including his brother Lynn, a B-17 flight engineer who was killed in action during a bombing mission over Germany in 1944, and whose sacrifice we honor and remember today. That year of 1944 was when Don saw his first combat as an 18-year-old private first class. He was among the first assault waves landing on Guam, which was one of the first Pacific islands captured by the Japanese in 1941. To this day, Don and his fellow Marines are honored in Guam every July 21st on Guam Liberation Day. In February 1945, Don landed on Iwo Jima, and for the better part of a month, witnessed that bitter battle and its brutality. While he didn't know it at the time, the Marine Corps was to play a pivotal role in shaping Don's post-war life. On Guam and on Iwo Jima, Don played a vital role in helping combat Marines by serving on the front lines as a forward observer for naval artillery. He was a radio man in a 5-man team that was part of the 3rd Joint Assault Signal Company. And during the critical early days of the invasion, before land-based artillery could be brought into play, the firepower provided by the U.S. Navy was of critical importance. And Don risked his own life on the front lines to help provide that firepower to his fellow Marines. Being a radio man meant that Don left the Marines with skill, one that he further developed with the help of the GI Bill. He attended the DeForest Training School in Chicago, and a few years later landed a radio job with ABC in Chicago. Within a few months, he became a cameraman for ABC's new local television station, and later became a technical director. In 1970, he was asked to join the camera crew for Monday Night Football, and worked many high-profile sporting events, including the Super Bowl, World Series, and 3 Olympic Games. He won 2 Emmy Awards for his camera work, the first in 1959, and the second for his work at the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid. One of those Emmys sits proudly and safely high atop a cabinet in Don's Riverside living room. That skill with a TV camera and in TV production is what Don is helping instill in his teenage and adult charges who volunteer their time and spend their Monday and now Thursday nights filming Riverside Village board meetings and documenting other important local events like this one. You could say that Riverside owes the Marine Corps a debt of thanks for giving Don the training and sense of duty that would translate into his public service here. And again, I'm proud to introduce this year's veteran, Don Farnham.
I'd like our village president, Ben Sills, to come forward. We have a special certificate.
Thank you, Tom. It is my great honor on behalf of the Village of Riverside to recognize a great American, a wonderful mentor to many of our young people with regard to the Cable Commission, and one of Riverside's great citizens. The Village of Riverside is honored to recognize PFC Donald Farnham for his military service during World War II in the United States Marine Corps. His devotion and dedication to the United States of America was vital in securing and preserving America's freedom. Don, thank you for all that you've done and all that you continue to do for our village.
to invite Commanding Sergeant Major Frank W. Gressick to come forward. We have a very special presentation to make, which we literally found out about this presentation and this honor just 30 minutes ago.
So can everybody hear me back there? So there's a saying that we have in the military, hurry up and wait, right? So you hurry up to get somewhere and then you wait for a very long time sometimes. Sometimes things move really, really rapidly. And in the case with Don, things moved very rapidly when he left the service. So I'm here to right a wrong that wasn't bestowed upon him when he left the military service. So what we have here is several medals and some campaign ribbons. Don never got these when he left. So one of them is a good conduct medal. The other two are campaign ribbons. He's got the sharpshooter award. But there's two things that y'all can't see right now at the very bottom of that. And one of those is from the sand from Red Beach in Guam. And the other one is sand from the Black Beach in Iwo.
I would like to thank all of you for coming here today. I'd particularly like to thank Tom Sisolak and the veterans from Post 488 for this honor that they bestowed on me. I'm humbled and eternally grateful. I accept this award of honor on behalf of those soldiers that died on the battlefield defending our country. They gave their futures so that we could have ours. They are the real heroes today and every day and every war, and we must make certain that they are never forgotten. Thank you.
I would like to now invite our honored Riverside veteran, Mr. Lou Heine, United States Navy, Petty Officer, 3rd Class, from the Korean War, to come forward. And if his wife Martha and family would join him also. Martha can enjoy the chair there next to Lou. Come on up, Martha. Want to introduce yourself and your wife?
My name is Mike Heine. I've lived here for 1,000,000 years. This is my wife, Gwen. We met in New Orleans. It's my dad and my mom. My mom grew up in Berwyn. My dad grew up in Ellendale, North Dakota, and moved to Tampa, Florida area when he was 10.
You want to say where your other brothers are?
I have 2 younger brothers. One lives in just south of Atlanta. He's a pilot for Delta. My other brother beat me to retirement about 10 years ago. He lives in the Los Angeles area. Thanks. And by the way, all that stuff I read in the paper the other day, I hadn't heard any of that, and neither had my 2 brothers.
I would also like to invite our Riverside Village presidents to come up and be up here next to Lou and his wife, Joe DiNatale, Paul Stack, Jack Wyaduck, and Ben Sills. Any other village presidents that are here that I didn't spot earlier? And at this time, I'd like to invite our special presenter, Diane Saragoli, to come forward. Relax, have fun.
Got your tissue ready. Good morning, everyone. I think it's still morning. I'm here today to honor one of our own veterans, Lou Heine. He enlisted in the Navy in 1949, spent a year on active duty before being assigned to the reserves. Then in September 1950, the Navy recalled him to active duty. The Korean War had started. He trained at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina for corpsman field training. In May 1951, he landed in Busan, South Korea, and was a replacement corpsman in the weapons company of the 1st Marines, 2nd Battalion. A fierce battle ensued. He took care of those that could be helped while being bombarded until they could be removed to hospitals. It was during this battle that he was hit in the arm by artillery shrapnel. Not injured badly, he attended to his more seriously wounded comrade. Later, they were evacuated to a nearby hospital and then into the hospital ship off Busan, where he received his Purple Heart and a promotion to Petty Officer 3rd Class. After being discharged, he went off to the University of Florida and met his wife, Martha Karg. They married in March 1954 and had 3 sons. They moved from Berwyn to Riverside, where they still reside. Lou is an active member in the Lions Club, the Ford Model A Club, and is a master at carving large horses that you see in merry-go-rounds, only much better. My husband, Roland, a Marine, was drafted and served in Korea War as well. We met the Heines many years ago and became friends. I'm proud to have been chosen to honor Lou Heine today. Thank you, Lou. I also want to thank those who have given their lives, have served their country, and are serving today. Thank you.
I asked Lou this morning, I said, should I call you corpsman or petty officer? He said I should call him to dinner. So, which is a typical thing of these veterans, the modesty and the decency and the humble approach that they take to service, and Lou certainly represents the very best of that. In recognition of his honor, I do have a special memorial that we would like to present on the behalf of the Village of Riverside. The Village of Riverside is honored to recognize Lou Heine, Petty Officer 3rd Class, for his military service during the Korean War in the United States Navy and Marines. His devotion and dedication to the United States of America was vital in securing and preserving America's freedom. On behalf of the Village of Riverside, I present this
to Mr. Heine.
Thank you, Tom Sisolak, and thank you, the American Legion and the Covenant of Churches for recognizing my service and me. And thank you, Diane, for introducing me. I asked Tom, when he brought this up to me, if he would do a special favor, and he said he would. And that special favor is, I want you to imagine a Marine standing next to me that was in Korea about the same time I was. He has recently passed away, and his name is Roland Sergioli. Roland was a real Marine. I was just a medical corpsman. But here's Roland right beside me. It was a few years ago, the American Legion was kind of faltering, and one of our citizens then, who everybody knows, Scuffy Gross, revitalized it and brought in a lot of members, and to this day it's doing a real good job. Scuffy has been very sick the last few months. His daughter is here, and she almost snuck Scuffy in, but his doctor said no way. But anyhow, Scuff, you did good with the American Legion. I was talking to Don Farnham just a minute ago, and we both sort of thought we'd rather almost spend, not quite, almost spend a little time in combat rather than speak in front of a crowd. But not quite, right, Don? And speaking of Don, who was honored here 3 years ago, he's a Marine who served in the Second World War in Iwo Jima. And Don recently revisited Iwo Jima, and he brought back, he raised an American flag there, brought it down, brought it back, and it's now hanging in our public library, Riverside Public Library. So sometime go in there and salute that flag. Don would appreciate that. One last remark that I want to make is, General Scully, are you here? You're here, I know, I saw you. Where is he? Oh, yeah. I just, I've always been very honored that we have a real general in our town. And General Scully served on our trustees for many years. And thank you, General Scully, for living here and for serving our community so well. Anyhow, Roland and I thank you again for this honor. And I guess that's about it.
Cannot say enough about. What I did bring in is a very fine article from the Landmark. If any of you don't have it, I'll leave it on the table. And it really tells Ed Mexto's story in a very fine way. As you know, as you just heard, Ed is our honoree. He's got with him today the backbone of his relationship is his lovely child bride, Esther. Esther was really, the war thing was one thing, but Esther was the wife of the village president for 3 terms. Esther taught my wife very kindly how to deal with the comments that you get. Things like, isn't it great you get a pension? Not. Isn't it great you get a salary? Not. Isn't it great that you have health benefits? Not. So for that, my wife made sure she reminded me to thank Esther because it saved her 12 years of hearing that same story. We are honoring Ed today. He's here. 2 of his 3 children are here. Tom, to my far right, the cute lady in the hat who I knew since she was probably in high school, Susie, and her children. Susie traveled from the hinterlands of Hinsdale to be here with her dad. And Tom did come quite a way. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Mike is here. Tom is in San Diego. He is the one who's quite far away and could not get here. I first came to know Ed Mexto, and I learned his story the way I learned a lot about my own dad's story. These World War II guys are unbelievable in that they do the John Wayne thing. Oh, it was no big deal. It was nothing. I can remember as a kid always believing that my father had done 6 years in Miami Beach because that was where the mail came from if they were in North Africa. That was the postmark. And they never quite told you the story. And I learned much about Ed. Ed was a Marine pilot, and he really did it, as the article in the Suburban Life says, he did it. He went to school on his own. He paid for his own classes. He learned how to fly a Piper Club out here in Elmhurst. He studied, and he went out of his way to join, and he got in. And he will tell you, oh, it was nothing. And I can remember him telling us, oh, we had soft duty. We were in the Pacific after the Japanese had pretty much been contained. Well, anybody who reads history books knows the Japanese were never contained, and some of them continued fighting the war until the 50s and 60s that were on those islands. And Ed's job was to fly over. There was a thing called island hopping the officers came up with. And what it was is, let's skip the islands that don't really count. Why fight with the Japanese for that island? Let's just jump over it, take the island that we can use as an airstrip. And Ed's job was to bomb many of those islands that were supposedly harmless, but many of them had 15 and 20 and 30,000 Japanese samurai-type soldiers in there. So Ed did that, and like so many people, like my own dad, like so many of yours, the talking heads and the politicians told him, oh, you'll be out soon. Well, 1945 and 1946 came, and then they finally got out, some of them. Some of them, like Ed, 1947 comes, and then we pick up a new thing which the politicians call a police action. And Ed is off to Korea and doing that thing. All of that stood him in good stead. And years later, when he came back, he became a pilot, and he flew and had a distinguished career at United Airlines. I met Ed, not that anybody really cares, but I met Ed when I was a young man, relatively new in Riverside, only here 8 or 9 years, a stranger, a newcomer. And I became active with the police here and at the Brookfield Zoo, and we were trying then to stretch the police force because we're a small town, and we used to borrow some of the Brookfield police to patrol our areas and help us out. So because of that, you wind up doing favors. And in the course of it, our chief at the time, Don Gosling, who was a dear friend of Ed's, would tell me stories about Ed. That's how I'd hear it, because they would talk to each other, but not to little young kids. And I learned a lot of what I'm telling you, and I could go on all day and tell you stories that they told. I think then, once Ed decided that he would get involved in Riverside, which is not hard, because when you think about why we're here, I think about it every day when I drive through this little 2-square-mile town. I see our pretty trees, I see our pretty houses, and I say, but for these people, we would not be maybe doing this. Or if we were doing this, we might be saluting some Japanese guy. And I think when I go into court to do a case, that I might not be able to open my big mouth and defend or protect or prosecute somebody when I did that, if we did not have people like this who kept our system of government free. When I see people come into a church like this, and I see priests, and I see ministers, and you see rabbis or whatever, and you say, we wouldn't be able to do these churches if it weren't for these people. And the people that I'm talking about are the people like Ed Mexto and all of you and all of those out there. Ed came from Maywood, but he quickly became a Riverside resident, thanks to Esther. And they had raised their family here, and Ed got involved. Ed was the president of our village, and he did it for 3 terms. Nobody else has done it. And when I got in, I tried to push a rule that wouldn't be more than 2. But Ed was the kind of president that we could have had for 30 years, because all he cared about was the town, and as he used to tell me, do the right thing. When I became a freshman trustee, I would just watch Ed conduct the meetings, and I would watch his patient manner, and he'd say to me sometime after a meeting, hey kid, you know, let people talk, let them go on, and then you're driving the plane, so you got to do the right thing. And I remembered that, and on the day that Ed came in and he told me, he said, you know, kid, it was near his middle of his term, his last term, he had a grin from here to here, and I said, what is it? You know, what are you so happy about? He said, well, I'm flying the really big planes. I'm doing the DC-10s on the long run. Don't make a big deal of it or tell my wife too much about it, because she's going to know that I'm going to be gone longer. And he said, by the way, because I'm gone longer, you may have to cover me on a couple of meetings if I get stuck out there. And I did, but he usually made it. Sometimes he came running in his captain's uniform, and he ran the meetings. When I was sworn in as village president, Ed shook my hand and he said, kid, the rudder is in your hand, you're flying the plane, you won't be seeing me, adios. And that was the John Wayne. And I think that characterizes what these people are about. Ed Mexto characterizes the kind of men they were. Some people say, oh, these were heroes. I say these, in their own way, they were heroes, but these were just good men who did great things. And I would just ask you to do me one favor. Yesterday was Ed's 94th birthday. So by way of introduction, I could think of no better way other than my bad voice than to let's all sing happy birthday to Ed Mexto. And if you would, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Ed, happy birthday to you, and many more.
I would like Ben Sells to come forward and present a special citation we have.
I'm going to be reading this plaque on behalf of everyone in this room. The Village of Riverside is honored to recognize Edward Mexto, B-25 bomber pilot, for his military service during World War II and Korean War in the United States Navy and Marines. His devotion and dedication to the United States of America was vital in securing and preserving America's freedom. And this is on behalf of the Village of Riverside. Thank you.
Any family members would like to add any comments? We thank everybody for being here today to recognize Ed Mexto and thank and congratulate Ed for his military career. Village President, and this year, Lieutenant Colonel James D. Sullivan, United States Marine Corps, also Iraq War number 1. Lieutenant Colonel, please come forward with your wife and family. Also, I would like to invite the Riverside Village Presidents who are here today. Mr. Paul Stack, come forward and congratulate our honored veteran. Mr. Jack Wyaduck. Mr. Ben Sells. And then also you just saw Don Farnham come forward, a very close friend with Jim Sullivan. They've traveled many thousands of miles together. And I would now like to invite the American Legion Post 488 Commander, Joseph Bear Topinka, to come forward with some comments about Lieutenant Colonel Sullivan's military career.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Topinka. I'm the post commander for Post 488. As is traditional in a military environment, you always give a background or a biography on an honored individual. And it's my honor to speak a little bit about Colonel Sullivan today, who is also a member of Post 488. And might I just add, Colonel Sullivan, it is an honor not only to be introducing you today, but it also is an honor for me to be introducing you today alongside our American Legion colors, which have not been at one of these events for several years. So this is a first time, and I have to tell you, it's because of people like Colonel Sullivan, Coach Sisolak, and this community that our American Legion post is reviving and growing. Colonel James Sullivan was a U.S. Marine Corps pilot. Yes, Marines do fly. I'm not gonna do Marine jokes this morning, but Marines do fly. I was in the Army, by the way, so I love Marines. He attended the College of Spring Hill in Alabama and completed his college degree at the University of Illinois Circle campus in Chicago in 1975. He was a Marine Corps officer candidate at the Officer Candidate School at the Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps in 1975. And for those of you who don't know what it's like to be a second lieutenant, it can be one of the greatest times of your life. It can also be some of the most miserable times of your life. He attended infantry school and flight school, and he piloted an OV-10 Bronco, which is a Marine observation. We call it a fixed-wing plane. Fixed wing, for all those young people out there, means it's not a whirly thing, okay? I had helicopter pilots as friends, and I used to call them whirly birds, but what do you expect from a military lawyer? He was based at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, but he was also a forward air controller in exercises with his fixed-wing plane around the United States, Norway, Korea, the Philippines, and Okinawa, Japan during 1978 and 1980. He was also a pilot of a KC-130 plane, for which those of you who are here, I know there's some former reservists that used to be at O'Hare Airport, used to see those KC-130s fly all over the place. And if you've never seen them refuel, they're amazing. Basically, he provided refueling for jets and helicopters, along with transporting equipments and members of all the armed forces. He was a pilot during the first Iraq Gulf War from August 1990 and February 1991. He's also been a Delta Airlines pilot from 1987 until, I guess, August 8th, 2018, when he's going to be required to retire at his 65th birthday by FAA regulations. Colonel Sullivan, that is unfair and inappropriate, but I can't speak for Delta. Lieutenant Colonel James Sullivan was also honored to be the traveling companion with his very good friend, World War II Marine veteran of Guam and Iwo Jima, Don Farham of Riverside, who I will very shortly turn over the podium to, because together, along with their family members, these Marines have visited Iwo Jima and Guam in 2010 and 2015. And Colonel Sullivan is here with his wife, Lynn, his 3 daughters, Catherine, Margaret, and Amy. His 2 sisters, Sally and Suzanne, are here, and also his brother, Matt, are here. Let us give a warm applause for Colonel Sullivan. And as it is customary, we are going to turn this over to a Marine's best friend to speak about his friend. Thank you.
I would like to say congratulations, Sully, on your outstanding career and your service to our country with the United States Marine Corps. You and your family are true Americans. Send applause. Okay, now we'll try the 3 daughters.
Thank you guys for your service and for being the best setup. Thank you guys for everything. We appreciate it. We're so happy to be here with you today.
And of course, the true general of the family, Mrs. We'll have Lieutenant Colonel with some comments.
I'm just going to make this short, I promise. I'd also like to thank everyone for attending today this Memorial Day ceremony. I don't deserve this honor. The honestly over 1.5 million men and women who have given their lives for our freedoms in the Revolutionary War till today. If I could speak for them, I feel they wouldn't want to be honored as someone special. Just someone who did their duty to the best of their abilities, for their buddies, their families, and the country they swore to protect and defend. They have fallen on the land, sea, and in the air, in combat, in training, and in their bunks on the Arizona and the barracks in Beirut. They are our brothers. We owe 54 fallen and all of our heroes this honor for their sacrifice, which allows us to be here today. Free in the greatest country in the world. Your presence here today shows your respect and admiration for their service, and it's all good past. So say a prayer, raise a glass, or give a salute. Semper Fidelis, Latin for always faithful, is the motto of the United States Marine Corps. I feel it also applies to all of our honored dead's faithfulness to this country. But so should be our motto to always faithfully honor their sacrifice. We've got some copies up here on the table. Please grab one. And remembrance of their sacrifice and show this. Thank you very much.
Isn't it funny how the people who say they don't deserve the honor are the ones who always do? I'd like to present an award on behalf of the Village of Riverside to recognize Lieutenant Colonel James D. Sullivan, OV-10 Bronco pilot and KC-130 pilot, for his military service during the Iraq War I in the United States Marine Corps. His devotion and dedication to the United States of America was vital in securing and preserving America's freedom.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. You may return to your relaxed position. We would like to recognize Richard A. Dolish, United States Army, Special Military Intelligence Agent in the Korean War. If Special Agent Mr. Dolish would come forward, please. We're gonna have to sit down in front first. Okay. Right there. And also Richard's family and friends can come stand right behind him. I know there's several here. We also have several Riverside Village presidents here to congratulate Richard Dolish. Mr. Joe DiNatale, come forward and shake hands with Mr. Dolish. Mr. Paul Stack. Mr. Jack Wyaduck. And up here on the stage we have Ben Sells. And we also have a special presenter today. If Sergeant Daniel Creek would come forward, please. Sergeant Daniel Creek is also a U.S. Marine, 13-year veteran, served during Iraq War #1, combat veteran. He was the commander of a heavy machine gun unit, mobile unit, that fought to free Kuwait from Saddam Hussein's Iraq army. And Sergeant Creek has a few pertinent comments for Richard Dolish.
Good morning. I'm Dan Creek, the Vice Commander for Riverside American Legion Post 488. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out this Memorial Day morning to honor and remember all of our fallen service members and the service members present here today. It is very touching to see that so many caring people from our community value and sacrifice our fallen and wish to honor their memory. Thank you all very much. It is with great pleasure that I introduce you to our honored Riverside veteran for 2019, Richard A. Dolish. Richard is also the adjutant officer at our American Legion Post 488. Richard was a resident of Riverside from 1960 until 2017, when he and his wife Patricia moved to Burr Ridge. Richard is still very active in the area. He maintains an office in Lyons and owns and manages many properties in Riverside. Richard just celebrated his 90th birthday on January the 10th. Richard grew up in North Lawndale area of Chicago. In 1951, after graduation from college, he was drafted into the U.S. Army, where he attended Army basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. After basic training, he participated in special agent counterintelligence training at Fort Holobrand in Baltimore, Maryland. A man of integrity and trustworthiness, with his training, he was granted top secret clearance to classified information. Access to this information could cause exceptionally grave damage to national security if made publicly available. So I'm not sure how much he's going to be able to tell us about that today. Cleared for duty with the Counterintelligence Corps, Richard quickly found himself in Korea during the Korean War. One of his missions there was to gather intelligence at the front lines. After Richard's time in Korea, the Army sent him, along with the 1st Cavalry Division, to Japan for occupation duty, once again gathering intelligence for the U.S. Army. Richard and his family are true patriots. His father was in the U.S. Army Air Corps. 3 older brothers also valiantly served in the military during World War II. One brother, Edward, several days following the D-Day invasion, was killed in action. He is buried in Normandy, France. His oldest brother, Jerry, fought with the U.S. Army's 33rd Division as a Master Sergeant. His 3rd brother, Louis, served in the U.S. Navy and had the good fortune to survive being torpedoed 3 times on 3 separate warships. Richard and Patricia have 5 children. Donna is a podiatrist doctor in Alaska. Christine was an administrator at Loyola Hospital. She is now retired. Andrea was a practicing attorney and now teaches law at the College of DuPage. Sherry is a pharmacist. Richard M. is with the Dolish Property Management Company. It is with great pleasure that I introduce you to Richard Dolish.
Thank you so very much, neighbors, friends and family, and Americans. A great deal of what I was going to say was covered by my introduction, and I appreciate that. But I have to tell you, my parents were Czech-American immigrants, and I was raised in southwest side of Chicago, Pilsen, little village. My father was an airplane mechanic during the First World War. My brother, Jerry, was at the advent of the Second World War. 7 years he served during the Second World War. Eddie, my brother, got killed after surviving the invasion of Africa and Sicily. And finally, rests now in Normandy, France. My youngest brother, Louis, was a Navy gunner, and we torpedoed 3 times and survived. So I am a member of a military family and very proud of that fact. I have to say something very, very important that I think. I've traveled a lot since I've been released from the military. And one of the things I've noticed is cemeteries. And I was pleased to see this on TV just the other day. There are many American cemeteries in foreign lands with hundreds and thousands of young American men between the ages of 18 and 23 that died to produce the freedom of all these countries. Do you realize it wasn't only our freedom that they were protecting, but it was the freedom of other nations that were developed. Even Germany. Germany was under a dictator. Czechoslovakia, Poland, Estonia, Bulgaria, Romania, France, Belgium, Holland, all these countries were under dictatorship, and we fought, and our boys lie there as evidence of the true American spirit, that everyone's entitled to freedom and opportunity. Even China today, if you remember, and most people forget, we're under the Japanese. We fought in the Pacific and freed China, the Philippines, Indonesia, all these foreign lands where our boys are buried as evidence of the American spirit. So if you want to keep in your mind and your hearts what American boys have done for this world that we live in, and honor the spirit that they created for freedom of the world, and look down at these people that are quick to find the deficiencies that we sometimes find. There are sometimes errors, but all the good that we produce can never be overcome by the wonders that American boys did for this world. So thank you for your honor, and I'll accept that and tribute to the boys that have left. Thank you so much.
I would like to invite the 3 Girl Scouts to come forward again.
We will be singing America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dreams that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with
Owen is in the 5th grade at Central School, and he's 11 years old. For the next few minutes, if you could visualize yourself standing in a destroyed cornfield in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania on November 19th, Thursday, 1863. I introduce President Abraham Lincoln.
Thank you all for coming. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives so that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggled here have consecrated it far above our own poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus so far nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Next, we have a very special new opportunity today to enjoy some very special sacred music, and this is for all veterans, and this will be performed by 2 Native American friends of mine who are here today. They'll proceed here in a minute. William Buckholz Allison is an Algonquin Great Lakes American Indian. He has some beautiful wooden flutes that he will play in a minute as soon as they get up to the front. Joseph Standing Bear Schrantz is an Ojibwa Great Lakes Native American Indian. He is also going to proceed in with a very rare eagle staff, which is actually the first flag, perhaps in the entire United States, in America, even as far back as 8,000, 9,000 years ago. Every Indian nation made their own eagle staff, which is made with wood interior, covered in buffalo skin, and then eagle feathers are attached. Joseph Standing Bear's eagle staff is made with spotted eagle feathers, and they are going to be escorted by Riverside's 5 Eagle Scouts. So if the Scouts would come forward, and Joseph and Bill can follow them. Yes. You want to sing from this mic? Sure. Okay. Joe's going to come up. Come over here. I want to say one thing here. Before Bill begins, I would also like to mention that the village of Riverside, 8,000 years ago, perhaps 9,000, maybe 10,000 years ago, was actually an American Indian village for the Ojibwa Nation, Algonquin Nation, Potawatomi Nation. In fact, every 2 miles in separation along the entire Des Plaines River, there was a separate Indian village And in the winter, then they would kind of come together and be only like 10 miles apart, so that way they could survive together in the cold winter. American Indians are very respectful of all of their soldiers, all of their warriors, whether they are Native American soldiers or other cultures. And the thing that's very unique, very special, is the highest military honor, the Medal of Honor Award, has been presented to more Native American Indians than any other American cultural group. So with that, I'd like Bill to introduce his songs and begin.
The first song I'm going to play is an Ojibwe Eagle song, or an honor song, to honor all our veterans. This song I was asked to play from my CD. It's called Mother. And the reason why it's called Mother is that it honors both my mothers, my adopted and my birth mother. So I'm going to share that with you. And the last one is the other side, father. Both were both my fathers. Before the Veterans Day, I'm sharing this with you. Thank you.
Stay up here a second. Joe's going to talk to us. Yes, you may.
We appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and we can never, ever say enough for our veterans. God bless you.
I would like to recognize our newest soldiers. This young man came in the gymnasium today not knowing he would be recognized, but I'm glad that he did. I'd like to have Kevin Reimer come forward. Right there in the front is good. Kevin Reimer just recently finished high school and some college work at Calumet College. And I would also like to have his mother come forward, Mary Beth Reimer. And his brother, Chris Reimer. Chris's mother just informed me that he also just returned from 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan and was wounded in combat as well. Congratulations, Chris. And I'd like to have our officers wish this young man, Kevin, good fortune, good success, and also congratulate Chris and their mother.
The St. Mary's School Student Choir will now come forward with their choir director, Lisa Weiss Cornelius.
Thank you very much. I would now like to invite the new Riverside.
We would now like to begin with the honor roll call. And if you look at your program once again, on the second page is the complete list of all of the Riverside 54 young men from Riverside, many of whom graduated from Riverside Brookfield High School and enlisted, especially during World War II. Some of these men even dropped out of high school to enlist. 3 men from World War I, 44 World War II, 5 from Korea, 2 from Vietnam. And I would like to invite the bell ringer, Killian Klotz, to come forward, Eagle Scout, Troop 24. This duty is a privilege of the Riverside pastors to read the names of the Riverside 54 who were killed in battle. They will each read 1 page, approximately 9 names. After the page is concluded, then Killian will ring the Navy brass bell 1 time. And the first page is a young man that I am privileged to introduce for the first time. He and his family just moved to Riverside. He is the new rector at the St. Paul Episcopal Church, Father Luke Wetzel.
Members of the United States Armed Forces from Riverside, Illinois, who were killed in action serving our country. From World War I, Albert Edward Moore, James P. Quinn, the Reverend Hedley Heber Cooper. From World War II, Donald Arthur Abel, Richard K. Babbitt, Bruce O. Bigger, Otto C. Blechschmidt, George D. Bohati, David C. Bauman, and Paul Brennan.
Thank you. Father Chris from St. Mary's Catholic Church.
We continue list of the soldiers from the Second World War. Curtis Buran, Mark W. Castle, James F. Ekman, Trevor A. Edward, Robert W. Egglestone, Robert H. Fenley, James H. Green, Arno M. Hess, James H. Hosgood, and John J. Janovic.
Pastoral Associate Matthew Bropey, St. Mary's Catholic Church.
Richard Jiska, Bert T. Kruger, Francis J. Lastina, Robert A. Lizotte, Donald C. Lundgren, Homer C. McDowell, Richard H. McFarland, Frank J. Mansell, Harry P. Martini, Thomas McHugh.
Dennis Lauritsen, St. Peter and Paul Lutheran Church.
Jerry G. Meachon, Harold C. Miller, William Munson, William Oldacre Jr., Keith A. Orsinger, Francis P. Parker, George S. Proxa, Richard Rogers, John Ruckus.
Sister Margaret, St. Mary's Catholic Church.
World War II, Thomas R. Schluter, John N.D. Smith, Edward Spritzma, Jack E. Thatcher, Graham Trevor, Elmer Ulick, John T. Warner, Merle F. Wolf.
Father Thomas May, St. Mary's Catholic Church.
From the Korean War, James J. Anderle Jr., David M. Barrett, Edward V. Laddick, William Leonard, Edward Clark Sachs. From the Vietnam War, John W. Bezekny, Donald Pratt.
If the firing squad would make preparations, I would also like to invite the following scouts to come forward. Killian Klotz is already here, and Stephen Sandusky. Would also like to invite Sergeant Greg Saganich to come forward. Command Sergeant Major Frank Gressick to come forward. Commander Joe Troiani to come forward. And Gunny Tom Day to come forward. Greg Saganich will take the Navy wreath, present that to each of the uniformed military, who will then hand it off to the scouts that are here. Scouts can come up to the front and center there. Let's move right up in front of Commander Troiani. Greg Saganich will take the folded American flag, present that to each of the uniformed soldiers, and also then to Stephen Sandusky. The scouts can about face. They will proceed down the center aisle, across the back aisle, over to the exit door. Once the wreath arrives at the door, the 21-gun salute will begin. Please rise. Uniformed military can follow. Go ahead, Frank and Greg, you can follow the scouts.
Attention. Fire 3 volleys. Ready. Aim. Fire. Ready. Aim. Fire. Ready. Aim. Fire.
Reverend Dennis Lauritsen for our benediction.
I invite you to stand for prayer. And let us unite our hearts in prayer. O eternal and almighty God, we give thanks today for all those who have shown the greatest love by laying down their lives for others. And we pray especially for those in our military throughout history, and we give thanks for them who have sacrificed their lives for their fellow citizens and for all of us who came after them. And as we remember their service, keep us mindful of all those for whom this day is a burden, and then send your spirit of comfort to them. Now be present with all the women and men who are serving in the military today. Allow them to live for the peace known only from you. And then help us to be worthy of their legacy and keep us mindful of their service, that in all things we may live our lives in praise and thanksgiving to you and to you alone. We pray this through Jesus the Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
As you remain standing, I would like the Color Guard exit parade, Will, to come forward.
Color Guard attention. Color Guard forward march. Color Guard, retrieve the colors. Salute. Color Guard, retreat.